Back at it again with some guided notes, this time over basic trig ratios. So, we'll start with a review of the basic ratios. There are 6 total trig ratios, but the major 3 that we have covered so far are the sine, the cosine, and the tangent. They relate different parts of a right triangle, which are the hypotenuse, the adjacent leg, and the opposite leg. Just for reference, let's write down the three trig ratios again. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent is opposite over adjacent. Cool? All right, let's go ahead and move on down to some more parts of the notes. Sometimes we're going to do a trig ratio. Sometimes the ratio is going to be a rational number. That may or may not need to be simplified. The problem right here says find the cosine of angle E. So we will find the angle in question, mark it some way so we know which angle we're talking about. Write the ratio for cosine. We just did that. That would be adjacent over hypotenuse. Determine the appropriate sides and place them into a ratio. What side is adjacent to E? What side touches angle E? Well, it's this right here. So it's 48 on top, and then it's hypotenuse. What is the hypotenuse? The hypotenuse is the side across from the right angle, so it would be 73. Now, think about, is simplification necessary? For your IXL assignments, you're going to have to write your answer as a fraction, not a decimal. So, simplification in this case, not necessary. As far as I know, 73 is a prime number, so our final answer can just be 48 over 73. Okay, let's do another example. This is also the cosine ratio on the next one, but you'll find that there's just one difference on this. First of all, write the ratio for cosine. That would be adjacent over hypotenuse. Identify the appropriate sides. Well, let's look and see. We need to find t. So what's adjacent to t? 16 is adjacent to t, so we'll put that on top. Next, find the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is 34, so we'll go ahead and put that in the denominator. Since both numbers are even, the ratio or fraction can be simplified. So we will go ahead and reduce both the top and bottom by a factor of 2, dividing both of those by 2. So 16 divided by 2 is 8, and 34 divided by 2 is 17. So our final answer would be 8 over 17. That's as simple as it gets. Okay, let's go ahead and try a similar problem, this time with the tangent ratio. So it's asking us to find the tangent of J. So first of all, let's notate the angle that we are looking for, J. What's the ratio for tangent? I believe that is opposite over adjacent. Identify the appropriate sides and place them into a ratio. So let's see, what's opposite J? Opposite J is side 60. So we'll go ahead and put 60 on the top. And then on the bottom, we have the, not the hypotenuse, we have the adjacent side. Adjacent to J is 32. So we'll go ahead and reduce that. They're both even numbers, so I could just divide them by 2. But I feel like there's a quicker way to simplify that. what if I took a 4 out of both of those? So 4 goes into 60 15 times, and 4 goes into 32 8 times. So I believe 15 over 8 would be simplest terms. Let me know if you need a trick on simplifying fractions. I have a trick in case you're not good at doing that. Okay, now let's go to the next one. Sometimes the answer is irrational, and you will need to rationalize the denominator. Okay, you may or may not have studied this in algebra, but it's just a process where you remove all the square roots from the denominator of the problem. So let's go ahead and take a look at that in practice. So, first of all, it says find the cosine of k. So first you would write down the ratio for cosine. That never changes. That's going to be adjacent over hypotenuse. Next, you would identify the appropriate sides and place them into a ratio. So we're looking at k. So what's adjacent to k? It would be this square root of 30. So we'll go ahead and put that on top. Then on the bottom, we have the hypotenuse right here, which is the square root of 66. And now we just need to rationalize and simplify our answer. First thing I would do is just put them both under a square root and reduce that fraction first. That's not written too well. Let me see if I can do better on that. That's supposed to be a 30. So it's 30 over 66, which reduces to 15 over 33. So I divided both those by 2. You can still take a 3 out of both of those, and you can make that 5 over 11. And remember, it's still over the square root. Okay, so basically, we have the square root of 5 over the square root of 11. And to rationalize, we need to multiply the top and bottom by the square root of 11. And then if we work that all out, we're going to get the square root of 5 times 11. So that'd be the square root of 55. And then on the bottom, we would just have 11. Okay, I realize this is a long and drawn out process. And if you need more help with rationalizing, I'm more than happy to help. But really simply put, you just multiply by the square root that's in the denominator. And it's supposed to make the answer simplified, but as you can see, it's quite a process just to do that. Okay, we're going to go ahead and do one more example, and then I'll explain, or actually 2 more examples, and then I'll explain the last activity. Okay, it is not unusual to need to use our good old friend, Pythagorean theorem. So that's your blank right there. Pythagorean theorem to find a missing side. So you see here we have the hypotenuse and a leg, but we're missing b. So what we need to do is use the Pythagorean theorem. So we have a squared plus b squared equals c squared. A is 24. Let's go ahead and square that. 24 squared plus b squared equals c squared. Well, I know what c is. Let me go ahead and substitute that. So that would be 26 squared. Okay, you might have to check my math on this, but I worked this out earlier, and I believe I got 576 when I squared 24, and I got 676 when I squared 26. So that means if I subtract 676 minus 576, I get 100. So b squared equals 100, and then that just means that b equals 10. So if I solve for the missing ratio right here, I can say, that's kind of ugly, we'll just go ahead and say b equals 10. All right, so tangent is opposite over hypotenuse, or opposite over adjacent. And the opposite to S would be 24. And adjacent to S would be 10. So we've got 24 over 10, which can be simplified if you take a 2 out of both of those. So that reduces down to 12 over 5. Final answer, 12 over 5 for the tangent of S. All right, just one more example, and then I'll explain the extra practice. Cosine of V. So we don't need Pythagorean theorem. All sides are given. So we go ahead and mark V right here. And then we remember what the cosine is. It is adjacent over hypotenuse. And then we just need the adjacent, which is touching V. So that's 6 square roots of 2. And then we need the hypotenuse, which is 2 square roots of 21. So let me make sure I got that right. Adjacent would be 6 square roots of 2 on the top, and the hypotenuse is 2 square roots of 21. Okay, that seems to work out pretty well. Now let's just go through and simplify. 2 would go into 6 3 times, and then we would still have the square root of 2 and square root of 21 down there. We need to rationalize the denominator, so we could go through and multiply top and bottom by square root of 21, leaving us with 3 times the square root of 42 over 21. But you can actually divide 3 goes into 21 7 times. So it's actually the square root of 42 over 7. Okay, I realize you probably are not going to get these rationalization problems right off the bat. I'm more than willing to work with you on these. And then there's some probably helpful tools on the internet too to help you work and simplify rationalization problems. All right, the last thing I have for you is this link takes you to a fun little activity where you can work some trig ratios and play like a pretend game of mini golf. All I need you to do is go through the activity, and then when you get done, just go ahead and check. And just, it'd be nice to tell me how many levels you got to at the bottom here. I'll show you what it looks like on my computer just so you know. So obviously you have the paper and you won't be able to click, but if I click on it, it takes me to the link somewhat slowly. You may have to enable flash right here, and then all it's going to do is give you a triangle here, and then it's going to ask you a couple questions. So like here's R, 5 is opposite, and 10 is, let's see, adjacent. So you just come over here and say adjacent, and then you can just check your answer, and if you get it right, it's gonna go through all that. Should be just fun. That's what I meant it for. So go through that and enjoy that, and then turn your paper in when you're done. Thank you.